Hello again, this is Alan Russell. I want to bring you another segment on moments in the history of the Americas. And with me this morning is Brother Fitzroy James. As I told you earlier on in another segment, he's from Trinidad and Tobago. He's a very prominent caricaturist and a cartoonist here in Atlanta, Georgia. And like I said, we used to be on television quite a lot, and we had a little project going called Caribbean Keynoters. We used to go down to college circuits and talk about this kind of stuff. And so let me bring him on camera right now and let him tell you all about what we're going to talk about today, okay?
Good morning, Brother Alan. Thanks for getting me back on again. Yeah, we were discussing the idea of the Caribbean, of the African slaves into the New World. And there's one thing that I like to get people involved in is that when did the first African slave was introduced into the New World, into what was to become United States? Now, we had the Kunta Kinte episode, which showed the people on the plantation, and they referred to Kunta Kinte as the African. Now, they had lost the history. Now, let us go back to where the first Africans landed in the New World. There was a settlement called Jamestown. That is an English settlement, and that's another story of how the English people came into Virginia, that place called Virginia, and landed on a river, and they named the river James River, and they formed a settlement, and they called it Jamestown, after the King of England. Now, that was all good said and done, but these were not the kind of explorers that you talk about. These were all the dregs of England that were sent over to America to build a settlement. And during the first 19 years, they really suffered, because you got to talk about the episode with Pocahontas and John Smith and all those kind of guys. This was the period. Now, the first 19 years, there were no African slaves in the Americas. And how did they get to be in America? An English warship and a Dutch man of war attacked a Spanish galleon in the Gulf of Mexico. That galleon was transporting African slaves to and from, and also bringing back gold and silver from the captured lands of Mexico, Colombia, Peru. And these two ships attacked the Spanish galleon, killing off the Spanish and taking the most precious cargo, which was the gold and silver and jewels, and the 20 African slaves that were on the ship. Now remember, the Africans were in the Caribbean for 120 years already. Actually, from 1501, when the first one landed, into 1619. So there you had the African slaves from the Caribbean being transported backward and forward into slavery. When the Dutch ship took the Africans, the English was able to make its way back to England. But the Dutch ship didn't have food or water, and they could not go to Hispaniola, they couldn't go to Jamaica, they couldn't go to Puerto Rico, they couldn't go to Cuba, because the Spanish would have gotten information of how they got all this gold and silver. But they knew about the settlement in Jamestown, Virginia. So they sailed up the Chesapeake, went up Jamestown, the river, and exchanged. I want to emphasize that word. They did not sell slaves to the people of Jamestown, because they were poor themselves. They were having a hard time. Their economy was shot. All they had was a few pennies. So the slaves that the Spanish took of the Spanish ship was exchanged for food and water, so the Dutch could sail back to Holland. And that is how the first Africans were introduced into America. into what was later to become the United States of America. So this is where we are today. You are thinking of the Africans coming into the Americas. The first ones were slaves that were coming from the Caribbean. And as the record shows, these people did not remain as slaves. They were given their freedom after 7 years. So from 1619 until about 1660, the Africans had free reign in coming to America. Whenever these places got slaves, they did not stay into slavery.
Let me come on camera for a second, because I know, Fitzroy, you've been reading this stuff for quite some time, and I want you to give some names of books, titles of books, and maybe authors where our viewers can go, kind of check out this information for themselves and make sure that they understand we're not making this stuff up, but it's there for you to read, and maybe in the library or somewhere. Go ahead.
I consider the publication by the former deceased, the late Eric Williams from Trinidad.
Who was Eric Williams?
Eric Williams was the Prime Minister of the independent nation of Trinidad and Tobago. And he wrote a book called From Columbus to Castro. And I would advise any reader who wants to study the history of the Africans in the Caribbean to start with that book. It is called From Columbus to Castro.
There you got it. From Columbus to Castro. All right, Brother Fitzroy, I want to give you a nice round of applause for that. You did very well. Thank you so much this morning. We'll get back with you again, okay? Stay tuned.